guys, welcome back to another video here in our audio series in DaVinci Resolve. So today we're going to continue moving ahead with going through our audio features here in DaVinci Resolve Fairlight, and we're going to get started working with some of the effects. So if you're just joining us here, my name is Jay Yudlowski, and we've been going through an audio series where we've already looked at setting our levels in our clips. We've looked at setting an EQ and making adjustments to our clip that way. And we've also gone ahead and worked with some dynamics as far as compression, gates, expanders, and limiters. So if you haven't seen any of those videos, be sure to check up here. I'll link to one or two or some of them. There's also a playlist you can go and check out. So check those out. And if you want the audio file that we're using in this series, you can download that. I'll leave a link in the description below. Go check that out. So today we're going to be jumping into the effects, and we're going to be talking about two effects here. We're going to be talking about the vocal channel effect as well as the dialogue processor effect. So why might you want to use one of these effects? Well, let's say maybe all the EQ work that we already did and the dynamic stuff, it's a little too much for you. Maybe it's over your head a little bit. Well, these are simplified tools that give you similar results to what the EQ and the dynamics can do. So we're going to jump into Resolve, and I'm going to show you how to use each one of these tools, and you can decide if this works good for you or if you want to stick with your full-blown EQ and full-blown dynamics. So let's jump over into Resolve and get going here. All right, so we're in DaVinci Resolve here. Right now I'm in the Edit tab. This is the clip that we've been using for this whole series so far. So if you're interested, again, check out the link in the description. You can go pick that up for free. So the first thing I want to do here is jump over into the Fairlight tab. Now over here in the Fairlight tab, since we've been using this file the whole way, we've already got our levels adjusted here for us. And if we take a look at our mixer, which if you don't know how to open your mixer, come on up at the top of the screen here, click on Mixer. You're going to see your mixer over here. We've already worked with our EQ, which we can see has adjustments here. And we've already worked with our dynamics, which we can see the adjustments right here. So now what I want to do is copy this clip into its own track. And the reason that I want to do this is just so that we've got a clean slate in a track without any EQ and no dynamics, because these two effects that we're going to be taking a look at kind of take the place of the EQ and dynamics. It's just a more simplified version of it. So to copy my clip into a new track, I'm just going to go ahead, select it, hold my Option or Alt key, and drag it down into a new track. And you'll see I had made this first vocal track here a mono track, and now it comes in as stereo. That's okay. It was recorded in stereo, so it's fine. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So I'm going to go ahead and double click here, rename the track Vocals 2, hit enter, and I'm going to come up and mute my first track here. So in order to get to the first two effects we're going to take a look at, you want to make sure your mixer's open. You want to come to the effects area right here. And if for some reason you don't see your effects, come on up to these three little dots right here, click on those, and come down. You should see effects, and it should have a check mark next to it like it does here. Then you should be able to scroll up and down in that area. And if you still can't see it, uncheck some of these things, and that should help you be able to see your effects better. So you've got two ways to add your effects. One way is to come up here, click on the plus, and then come down to channel. And these are the two effects that we're going to be adding onto our channel today. So we're going to start with the vocal channel. Now, the other way that you can add the effects to your specific clip or your track is if you come up here to the effects library, you go ahead and click on that. And on the left-hand side here, you want to be in the audio effects. And you see right here, we've got Fairlight effects. There's all kinds of stuff here. It's the same thing you would see under the plus sign over in the mixer. So you can just come over here, and the first one we're going to be starting with, as I already mentioned, is the vocal channel. You can just click on it and drag it down onto your track or onto your clip. Now, I want it to be on the track itself, on the entire track, so I'm going to drag and drop it right over in this area here. I'm going to go ahead and close the effects library. So now we have the vocal channel window open here, and some of this stuff might start to look a little familiar to you. So we have an EQ over here on the left, and this is the EQ graph that shows us what changes we're going to be making to our clip. And on the right-hand side here, we have a compressor, and this is going to show us what kind of changes we are making to the compressor. We also have an output meter over here on the right, and that's going to tell you what the output levels of your signal are for this particular track or the clip that's being played at the time you're listening. And coming up to the top real quick, we have the vocal channel on-off button. So right here in this area, we've got the option to create some presets. If I click on the drop down here, you can see I've already got two created. But if you make some adjustments down here and then click on this plus icon, you're going to be able to save your own preset. These little buttons allow you to cycle through your presets. Here you've got the option to make two different settings for the effect, just so you can compare one to another. So you've got A settings and B settings. So you can change those if you'd like. To reset the entire window, you want to come up and click on this guy right here. And for a few more options, you can click on the three little dots. You can lock the plugin window or jump over to the preset manager. So now let's talk about this effect here and what it actually does. So looking down in the lower section here below our EQ, we've got our high pass filter. Now we did apply a high pass filter in the full-blown EQ when we were doing that, and this is the exact same feature here that you would be doing in this effect. So you can turn it on by clicking on this little icon right here, and you see the default setting for this is about 150 hertz. So right about in this area right here. And you can leave it at the default there if you want. You can try that in the EQ video that I'll link to above here if you want to check that out for more in-depth information about EQ. We set this around 100 to 120 hertz. Even 150 is probably fine. In this case, I'm going to just roll it back a little bit. Let's just put it right at about 120 there. And I'm going to leave that as it is for now. Now, when we look at this equalizer here, we've got simplified options as compared to our full-blown equalizer. So we have our low frequency range, a mid frequency range, and a high frequency range. And you notice the amount of dials we have here is much less as well. So looking at these icons here above each one of our columns, that's going to tell you what is your adjustment going to look like. Is it going to be a shelf type adjustment, or is it going to be more of a bell curve type adjustment in the low frequency here? So just getting started with that, let's roll this guy around and we can see the point that's moving on the top of our screen. Now this range is different than our high pass filter here because that's on and it's going to cut out everything below our 120 hertz here. So you notice our low frequency here only goes up to about 300 hertz, 330 hertz. There we go. So that's as high as we can go there. Now, so what I want to do is figure out if I actually need to use this low frequency EQ point or not. So what I'm going to do is click on my bell curve here, and then I want to come down to my gain, and I'm just going to boost that up. And you can see now we've got a little bell curve going on there. And what I'm going to do is play through my clip, and I'm just going to roll this back and forth through here and see if I hear anything that sounds harsh, sounds not good, has a muffled noise to it, or is hard to understand. And if we find anything like that, then we know we can go ahead and leave it at that particular frequency. So let's play through our clip and see what we hear.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in.
So maybe right up here at the very top, we're hearing a little something, but I think I might just leave it here, and I'm just going to reset the gain for now and just not apply it at all. And we're going to move on to the mid frequencies and kind of see what we hear in that area. This low frequency is just a pretty simple adjustment that you can make. You would find your frequency and then either boost it or lower it. And in this case, anything that sounds harsh, we're going to want to lower that a little bit. So let's move on to our mid-range frequencies. And again, we have a bell curve, and then we also have a sharper, steeper curve here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my steeper curve, and I'm going to go ahead and boost it all the way up. And again, I'm going to play through my clip, and I'm going to just listen for anything that sounds harsh. Now, as we mentioned in our other EQ video, we're probably going to find something in that 1 to 2 kilohertz range that doesn't sound so hot. We're just going to give it a try here and see what we hear.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully see.
So right about there, it sounds a little harsh to me. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that down a little bit. And most of the time I try to keep my frequencies pretty tight here, which is why I'm choosing this option versus that option. You can see it smooths out a lot of curves there. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on my steeper curve here because I want to affect less frequencies, because I know the part that sounded harsh is right about here. So let's play through and just see how that sounds.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through.
All right, I think that's a little bit better. It takes a little bit of that harsh sound out. Again, use some good headphones or some good speakers if you got it, because that's how you're going to be able to hear the nuances the best. Moving up into the high frequency range, do you want a shelf going, a high shelf or a low shelf? Or do you want to go with a bell curve? So let's leave this as it is here with the shelf. And generally, you're going to think about a low pass filter that you might use for this. So I'm going to dial this up to, I don't know, let's say around 13,000. And then I'm going to go ahead and just drop it down, because a lot of these high frequencies we don't need. So by adjusting the EQ here, it's a much more simplified version than if we use the full-blown EQ. You don't have as much control over your sound, but it gives you the opportunity to find some of those problem areas and take care of them relatively quickly and relatively easily. So by doing this, let's just play through the clip, and I'll turn on the EQ and turn it off and see if we can hear a difference.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here.
So I think that's pretty good. It does make a little difference. I mean, I can hear it. Hopefully you guys can hear it on your end as well. So this is an easy way to work with some EQ if it's a little too intimidating or you just don't want to spend the time to work with the full-blown EQ. But if you do want any more info about EQ, definitely check out that video I've linked to above and go check that out because it's going to give you a ton more info about EQ. Moving on to the compressor. So this is, again, a simplified version of the compressor. In order to turn it on, we can go ahead and click this little icon right there. And coming down below the on-off button, we have our threshold, which is, again, at what point do you want that compressor to kick in? And I believe on our regular dynamics there, it's somewhere up around 15 or something. I'm just going to leave this at the default for right now because you can do that if you'd like to. Next, we have our ratio, which is how much does it cut back that audio once the compressor kicks in. So, do we have 2 to 1, so for every 2 decibels that it's above our threshold, the compressor will knock it back by 1 decibel, cut it in half. So where do we want that to be? Well, looking at our little graph here, I want it to come in below 0 dB, so I'm going to go with 2 and leave it around there. Below that, we have our reaction. That is how fast you want that compressor to kick in. You can leave that at the default setting. That's just fine. And lastly, we have gain here. So when you apply some compression, you may lose some volume or some of your audio level. So you can always boost the gain a little bit to bring it back up. And finally, you've got a gain reduction meter over here on the right-hand side. And that's just going to help you determine what your level is and where it's at. So let's turn off our compressor. We'll play through our clip. Then I'll turn on the compressor and see what happens here.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here do in the Fairlight tab.
So watching my levels, it's falling a little bit below 10 there, and we can see the gain reduction is working. I did crank up the ratio just a little bit there. So let's say I boost up the gain a little bit. Let's play through the clip. I'm just going to kind of watch where it is on the meters and see how it's looking.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here do in the Fairlight tab. So this is the sample clip we're going to be starting.
So I think that's pretty good. So again, this is a simplified version of the compressor. There's not as many options here. If you want to know more about compression and the dynamics and using the full-blown dynamics panel that we talked about in the last video, click on the link above. That's going to take you over there and give you a ton more information about the compressor and the dynamics here in DaVinci Resolve. All right, so that is the vocal channel effect that you can use here in DaVinci Resolve. Again, it's a simplified version of the EQ and your compressor. So you can use that. It's going to save you a little bit of time if you don't want to get all involved in the other full-blown dynamics and EQ. But keep in mind for the full-blown EQ, the dynamics, or even any of these effects, a lot of them you can save presets for, so it'll be a one-click thing. You go in, boom, set your preset, and then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about changing settings and really going through the whole process every single time that you make a video, especially if you use the same microphones or the same types of setup. Hit your preset and just make some minor changes. So if you guys are liking this audio series, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that little bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. All right, back to the tutorial. So the next effect that we want to talk about here in the Fairlight tab is the dialogue processor. Now, this is, again, a simplified version of doing some EQ and dynamics and that kind of stuff. So we're going to take a look at that, and I'll go through each part of it, explain kind of what it does, how it works, and maybe this is an option, too, for you to use in addition to or in place of the vocal channel that we just took a look at. So let's check that out. So again, in the Fairlight tab here, let's go to our plus icon here under our effects. I'm going to go ahead to go to channel and dialogue processor. So before we get going with the dialogue processor here, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn off my vocal channel because I don't know that you would use both of these together. You'd probably use one or the other. And again, I still have my original track muted there because we don't want to worry about that. So here's the dialogue processor window. Let's just run over it real quick. Again, at the top right here, we have reset all. You click here, we've got the option to lock the window and the preset manager. Coming down here, you've got the plus icon that will allow you to save a preset. Again, default settings here, and if you click this drop down, there's already 2 things set up here, one for female voice and one for male, so I'll go ahead and click male. The arrows will move you back and forth between your presets. Again, you can come up with 2 different settings so you can listen back to back to see what settings sound best. And moving down into the actual dialogue processor, again, your on-off button right here. On the left, we have our input, and I'm actually going to go ahead and turn all these off to get started here. The little red buttons always turn it on and turn it off. The first one we have here is de-rumble. So you can think of de-rumble as getting rid of any of that low-end bass that kind of might rumble in your clips a little bit. Sometimes you might hear it, sometimes you might not. It kind of does something similar to what a high-pass filter would by knocking out some of those lower frequencies that you don't need. So looking at the de-rumble here, I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and now we can set the frequency at where we want that to be. And again, this is kind of like your high pass filter that we've seen before in the EQ as well as the vocal channel. So I'm going to roll that guy up to, let's go with 120, and we'll leave that there. Now you might not notice a difference as I play through it here with the D-rumble on and off, but let's just give it a try here.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell the difference there. There's not too much low-end rumbling happening in this clip that I have open here. It's shot with a shotgun mic on top of my camera, so there's not a whole ton of low end on it anyway. But you can go ahead and turn that on, and I think it's a good idea to use it. All right, next we have D-Pop. So D-Pop is going to take away any of the popping sounds. And I mean, it's not going to take everything away, but it's going to help with any of the hard popping sounds that you may have in that, around 500 to 250 hertz range. And it's going to be some of that lower end frequencies, not quite bass, but down around that range where you might hear some, deeper popping kind of sounds in your clip. So you can go ahead and turn that on. And if we look back at the screen here, you can adjust the frequency as well as adjust the amount that is kicking in. So I'm going to double click the wheels here for the defaults. I'm going to turn it on. We're going to play through the clip, and I'm just going to watch this little meter here to see if it's actually doing anything.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip.
So it doesn't look like it's doing anything. I'm actually going to bring this up because anything down below, where we set our D-rumble at, you wouldn't hear anyway. So I'm going to bring that up to 250. And let's just crank this up just to see if we hear any difference here.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully see.
So you can see it is working. We do see that meter moving there. Again, it's going to take care of some of those harsher sounds or muddy kind of sounds that you might find in that lower frequency range. So you just got to try it out, play with it, and see if it makes a difference on your clip. We can see it working here a little bit. Can you hear it? That's debatable, but you could try it out and see if it works on your clip. So next up, we have the De-Esser. So that's going to help take care of any of those harsher S-type sounds like s. That's going to help fix some of that in your clips. And most of the time, you're going to find S's sound a little harsh. At least I do. I mean, I guess it depends on your microphone, your setup. Most of the time, I find the S's are a little harsh, and I do go ahead and apply a De-Esser on my channels that I'm speaking on. So let's jump in here and check this out. Again, I'm going to turn on the De-Esser here. And looking down here, we've got our frequency range. So you can select anywhere from 700 hertz all the way up to 9,000 kilohertz here. And most of the time, I think you're going to find your harsh S's somewhere in that 5,000 to 7,000 range. You're not really going to find things lower than that. You may find some harsh sounds too in that range of 1 to 2, maybe 3,000. But most of the time, those harsh S sounds are going to be up in that upper range of your frequencies there. So I would set this, you could try the default here for the male setting, which is around 7,000. I would leave it there. Let's watch our meter here as we play through the clip, and our amount is set to 1. So let's see if we can hear a difference with that.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects.
So I can see it's working. I'm actually going to turn it off, play through a little, and then turn it on and see if we can hear a difference here.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the...
So I don't know about you guys, but I can hear a difference there. Again, I got some headphones on, and maybe it's easier that way. So listen closely and see if you can hear that difference. Again, it's going to be subtle. A lot of audio changes are subtle. I feel like I'm always saying that, but it's important to realize that these changes are very subtle. But at the end of the day, they all make a big difference. So the De-Esser, again, around 7,000. Look in that range and watch those meters, and that's how you're really going to be able to tell if it's working or not. So next up, we have a compressor here in the dialogue processor. So this is a even more simplified version of the compressor than in the vocal channel that we already took a look at. Let's check this out. So again, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And now we have two options here. We've got threshold and amount. Now we don't have a ratio to know how much we're putting it down by. It doesn't even matter here. We're going to set our threshold. You want to bring it up, I'd say somewhere between 20 and 15. Let's park it at 20 for now. And then you've got your amount slider. And below that, at the very bottom, you have how quickly do you want this thing to react? Do you want it to react fast or slow? And again, this is the most simplified version of the compressor that you're going to find right here. So I'm going to turn it off. We're going to play through the clip. We're going to watch our meters here and see if it's making a difference.
And guys, here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects.
So it looks like it's not even doing too much. I'd have to dial back the threshold. And even if I double click and reset it here at minus 23, I'm going to leave that there, and it looks like we would need to boost up our audio levels here a little bit anyway, but let's just play through again and see if we get anything here on our meter.
Is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here.
Okay, I'm not really seeing too much there on the meter. So I can see that we're losing some signal too on the output here. So there's a bunch of different ways we can boost it up a little bit, but I'm just going to come in and boost up the volume just a little bit here, just so we've got some more coming through our effect. So let's play through and just see if we get anything on our compressor now.
Our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here do in the...
So hopefully you guys can hear the compression there. It is making a little bit of a difference. Again, we'd probably have to adjust our levels a little bit just based on using this effect, but you can see it's working. We see it moving on the meter, and hopefully you can hear the difference because I can hear a difference on my end here. So next up, we have the expander. Now, what's an expander? So if you saw our dynamics video, again, a link to it up here, you know what the expander is. It's going to drop down the signal of the lower level sounds in our clip here. So basically like the fans running on my laptop here. If there's a quiet spot when I'm not talking, you might hear it a little bit. The expander is going to help get rid of that. Similar to a gate, although not quite as drastic as a gate, where a gate can knock all the sound out below a certain level. The expander is just going to help make those quiet parts quieter, so that way you don't have as much background noise going on. Again, it can't take care of all of it, but it's going to help. So let's jump in here and check out the expander and see if it makes a difference on our clips here. Again, the expander, we're going to go ahead and turn it on. Again, the only options we have here are threshold, which is where do you want that expander to kick in. Again, think about your graph going down. And you know what? Let me just open the dynamics here. So if I turn on the expander, the threshold is this point here. So anything below that on my decibel level is going to be dropped down and reduced. So I'm going to say, okay, anything below minus 36 on my meters, that can get reduced. And then the range, how much do you want to reduce it by? Again, it just gives you a number of dB. It doesn't show you a graph or anything. And then it has, do you want it to react fast or slow? So I'm just going to leave it on slow. So let's play through the clip, watch our meter here, and I'll turn it on and off, see if we hear any kind of difference. Now, the place you might notice the difference is in the parts where I'm not talking. For example, at the very beginning of the clip and at the very end. So let's turn it off. We'll play through this first part, then I'll turn it on, play through the first part, and we'll play through it all and see what we hear. Okay, so you can hear that background noise. Turn it on. Much less. Did you notice that? It's a lot less with the expander on. So let's go ahead and leave the expander on and play through the clip.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here do in the Fairlight tab. So this is the sample clip we're going to be starting with. I'm going to make this available to you guys to use so that you can follow along if you want.
So I did notice in some parts of the clip where I'm not talking, that background noise is quieter than it was originally, just like in the beginning of the clip there. So the expander's doing what it's supposed to do. And again, if you need to, you can go ahead and crank up that range, and that's going to add even more. You can see our meter going up and up and up until eventually, it's just going to cut out too much. But you can always reset these by double-clicking on it, and it's going to bring it back to its default level. So the last thing that we have here in the dialogues processor is something called Excite. So Excite is basically just going to kind of boost your high-end frequencies a little bit to kind of just add a little excitement, a little spunk to your voice. All right, it doesn't add spunk, but it just makes those higher frequencies a little bit higher and helps improve the clarity of your voice a little bit. So let's see how that works on this clip. Again, we've got Excite here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and it just has a slider for an amount. So we'll just play with this a little bit as we play through the clip here and see what it does. So let's listen in and see what we got.
What's happening, guys? Here is our sample audio clip we're going to be using as we work through the Fairlight tab here. We're going to be doing everything from setting our levels to adding in some effects and hopefully seeing what all the effects here do in the Fairlight tab.
So you can see it changes the sound a little bit. I would keep this pretty low. I think when you crank it up, it just it pulls too much out of the voice, and it just doesn't sound good in my opinion. But it's something that you can use kind of help with clarity just a little bit. You can throw it on there, or when I've used this tool in the past, a lot of times I don't even use the Excite. I just turn it off, and I don't know. You can use it or you cannot. It's up to you, whatever you like your audio to sound like. So again, once you got all your settings set here, if you wanted to save a preset, click on the little plus here, and you can go ahead and name it whatever, and you'll have your preset saved for you. And do remember that as you make all these effects and changes here with the dialogue processor, you're probably going to lose some of your signal. So I'm just going to play through this. I'm going to mute it real quick so we don't have to listen. But if I watch my meters here, okay, this is peaking up to here. But we see over here, it's between that 10 to 15. It's a little bit lower on the output. So you may want to go back and boost up either your volume of the particular clip or come over and boost up your fader a little bit on your channel to make sure that you're getting some good levels here coming out of the effect. That's it, guys. If you want to see more cool videos about audio here in DaVinci Resolve, definitely click up there. And if you want to see what YouTube picks out for you, click down there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned because we're moving through more effects as we move ahead in our audio series. Give it a thumbs up, hit that bell too, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!